Hello, uh, it's me, Jordan. Welcome to the YouTube channel. Like you've never seen a YouTube channel before. This is a kind of a review show, but not really a review show because a lot of reviews from what I've seen are kind of just, cartoon characters or people getting angry and kind of vloggy situations as well. So what I decided to do is really interesting. I have a page of notes. I'm just going to read them and call it a day. Hopefully, post-production will overlay different things to illustrate my points, and hopefully copyright claims don't knock down this video. It's YouTube, so we know that is definitely going to happen. So, before we read the notes, just want to thank everyone for the words of encouragement to try this out. And tonight's episode is really important to me. Simply put, because this is, to start this off, it's like the first episode. I wanted to talk about something I really enjoy. And if you look around me, you know that I have a lot of things I'm passionate about. G4, all over the place. Love that network, glad it's back. But one other thing that you might notice is these two little shirts in the background here. Those are little subtle hints to tonight's subject, which is Death Parade. Let me explain. Death Parade is my favorite anime. For the longest time, I've really grown to not really like anime. I think it's kind of been one of those nodes, is just my dislike of anime. Mostly because American dubs are terrible. Subtitles, yeah, subs over dubs, I understand your valid point. However, it's mostly just plot points, if that makes sense. Now, animation is a fantastic medium to illustrate storytelling. Usually the kind of anime I enjoy are kind of less than 100 episodes, and they kind of don't take place in a high school, if that makes sense. And when you put into those factors, it kind of knocks out about 90% of anime. But sometimes there is exceptions to the rule. For instance, Jujutsu Kaisen is also a pretty good series. But tonight we're talking about Death Parade, which is, once again, my favorite anime. There's going to be some content warnings here. I have written down here, suicide, death, and depression, which is pretty much given because that is kind of major plot points in the show, and yeah, I guess there are going to be minor spoilers in the process. I'm trying to keep spoilers to a minimum with this because I think one of the big appeals to this series is the final episode, and that big twist at the end I think is one of the best moments in anime, and probably for what I've seen in content in general. Which is, I don't understand why we call it content these days. Everything's content. YouTube videos are content, video games are content, anime watching, that's content. But I digress. It's a one-season wonder. One of the sad parts about Death Parade, as I get into it, is it only lasted one season, and it's one of the best shows. I sometimes wonder what happened with season 2, or if they ever got a pickup for something else, but, for the amount of episodes they had, it's pretty good. Well, it started as an OVA called Death Billiards, and it was basically a mini episode of Death Parade featuring a young kid and an old guy playing billiards. That's what I wrote here, and yeah, that is a true statement. I remember watching Death Parade before seeing Death Billiards. I don't know if that makes it any better, because Death Billiards is kind of like a very abbreviated version of Death Parade, and it's actually referenced within this anime. It's a really, really good mini movie. That essentially has this little slight twist ending involving the old guy, and basically what happens in the middle of a Death Parade game. So, let's start with main characters. Deacon is a bartender that makes dead people in limbo play a parlor game, such as darts or bowling, for the consequence of life and death. While they look and appear as a bartender, they are actually arbiters who decide where people go when they die. They come in two results, which is reincarnation or the void, kind of like their version of heaven and hell. In reincarnation, your soul gets reincarnated, goes back to Earth into someone else's soul. You have no recollection of what happened. The void, it gets erased. You are in the ether, never to be seen from again. That is kind of what is the heaven and hell. And there is an angel and a devil in the elevators to illustrate such visuals. Before the people come in, they have really bad memory loss. They have no idea what's been going on, but they're told the rules of Death Parade. Rule 1, their location is confidential. They do not know where they are. But Rule 2, because they are there, they must play a game. Rule 3, the game will be decided by a spin of the wheel. They say roulette, but the roulette looks like a press your luck, little bleep bloop bleep thing. But sure, we'll call it roulette. 4, the stakes of this game are pretty high. It's life and death, which even though they're already dead, they're not telling them that. And 5, they cannot leave the bar until the game is over. So there must be a winner and the game must conclude. Rule 5 is basically the rule that is usually played the most often in Death Parade, because a lot of the time there's cruelty in these games, and a lot of time these people show compassion and they want to leave, or they show desperation because of the stakes of this game, and then when they see what happens, they still have to play it out, which becomes a big monumental part in the game itself, especially when arbiters can kind of bend the game in a certain direction to show how desperate people can be when stakes are really high. Basically, they're like reality show producers, if you really think about it. Alright, so, it is one of the coolest animes I've seen because of its graphic design. But the secondary character is not just Deacon, but rather his assistant, Shiyuki. Season 1 introduces Shiyuki. It revolves around her the entire season. And why she is there becomes a bit of a mystery. As the clues along the way kind of string along why she's there in the first place. And here's your subtle hint, it involves ice skating. Alright. If we can keep going into this, subs or dubs, in this case, both. It doesn't matter if you're subs or a dubs, you can find enjoyment in Death Parade. This is a really good dub. Most of the time, anime dubs are terrible. People should really admit that more often. Sometimes, it's just people going, what's it going? I'm an anime boy, and it just makes no sense. But with Death Parade, all of the characters, while sometimes sounding stoic, or sometimes sounding a bit anime-ish in its tone of, what's going on? It actually makes sense when you hear the context of the anime. So in a way, it does fit. And if you don't like dub, the sub version is also really good with the way Deacon's voice actor handles rules, and the way his voiceover artist is basically more calming and almost kind of like, at least in that interpretation, Deacon as a character, he's been doing this for years. So his presentation and the way he handles that character is one who is basically burnt out on all this. He's heard it all. He's seen it all. This is another day in the office. Here's another person pleading for their life. Please, I don't want to die. I don't want to die. And Deacon's just in there going, you must play the game. I'm sorry. You must play the game. And it becomes really interesting how robotic it is. Okay, next, a really banging theme tune, Flyers Parade. Thanks me from the past. Yes, there's a really, really hip-happening theme song with Death Parade. Radio, it fucks. Now that's a bop, if I haven't heard one. It is just this jamming, funky, awesome, almost on par to me with Cowboy Bebop and Tank. It is just like, it gets stuck in your head. It's such an earworm. And the intro sequence has a lot of clues also to how these people are dancing. If you've noticed the ice skating, you notice the ice skating. And that's also something really fun I love about Death Parade. All right. Next, a ongoing thing is this cocktail called Memento Mori. Memento Mori is Latin for don't forget, we all die. And that's the signature cocktail in Death Parade. I didn't write it down. I just sipped your cocktail, but it's blue and there's a cherry. So I'm just wondering how much of it is curacao, just to make people just really knocked off, or maybe it's just Bombay Sapphire. Who knows? All right. Next, sadly, no season 2. Yeah, that's true. This is something really fun. All right, so next, there is a Death Note Easter egg. In one episode, I believe it was episode 9, but I didn't write it down. I'm not fact-checking with my notes. I should point this out. I'm just writing shit down. Hope it works, and maybe it's verified. If not, oh well. But in one of these episodes of Death Parade, there is a bit where Light Yagami from Death Note is present. Not like as in character, but kind of as a photograph, as someone who is pretty much a known villain in the universe. All right, so next. Here we go. Each episode, and this is a good peel to Death Parade, it's standalone. I know there's a few double episodes, but most of the time it's standalone, which is something I really love. If you're there for Decum and Shiyuki, it's an overlaying arch, which is just amazing. It's one of my favorite parts about the show is for each episode there's little pieces and clues. But each episode itself stands alone because there is a couple, and there is a grievance, and there's a bit of a howdunit situation with what happened with these couples, and what led to their death, and what led to their bitterness. And it becomes this bit of like a real mind trip, where one moment you're siding with one character, and then a big twist runs around, and then you see them as a villain, so you're rooting for the opponent. It becomes this overlaying world of, just like in humanity, there is a gray area to all of us. And to me, that's kind of one of the most important things about Death Parade, is the way that they present humans on Earth as flawed, and it's in the desperation we sometimes have, and the way that we all have mistakes. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest points here, is that reliving your mistakes becomes an overlaying factor, mixed with passions and pursuits. Like each episode has kind of like a little deeper meaning to what it is, from being a workaholic to spending time socially with friends and family. There's another one with the obsession of fangirls, and how much of yourself are you willing to lose for someone that you've never really met before. That becomes an issue. How far will you go to change yourself for love is another episode of Death Parade. Each episode is like standalone in that regard. So even if you go into episode 5 not knowing anything about 4, 3, or 2, or 1, you can still go into it, at least from what I can tell, understanding this series as its own, and which is something I also really love about Death Parade. So I wrote down 3 of my favorite episodes of Death Parade. If you need to know, here they are. First one is the first episode, Death 7 Darts. A couple plays darts, but slowly it becomes about cheating on each other and pregnancy. It is one of the greatest episodes of Death Parade out there, because in addition to it being a couples game, there's a bit of game theory associated with it, because the premise is each person gets 7 darts. Whoever has the highest score wins. But the problem is, when you throw the dart, it hurts your opponent. So things hit the eye, my eye. It hits the heart, oh, my heart. And it becomes a bit of a, how much are you going to hurt your opponent just to stay alive? That becomes a draw. And then, as they realize the cruelty is there and they actually like each other, Decum says a twist to the rule, which is, even though I say you have to throw the dart, I never specified you can hit the board. You could just intentionally miss if you think so, but look at the score. If you want to play that way, it doesn't work. So it becomes a bit of a head trip, like, do I throw, not throw? And I love that in Death Parade. I'm not going to explain the twist ending. I think that's the best part of it. Number 2, Death Arcade. There's a gamer son. A son's a hardcore otaku, as they say, but he's just a gamer. I'm saying gamer. He is upset because his mom doesn't really have time for him, as she is too busy working as a news anchor. I think it's a news anchor. It sounded like morning show in the English dub, so we'll go with like a morning newscaster. So what they decided to do, in a twist of irony, is they decided to play an arcade fighting game for life or death. Without really throwing into the twist, at one point, the little joystick breaks on the anchor, and that makes her have a meltdown because the little ball is gone and she has to get off the anchor to try and grab the ball. But instead of grabbing the anchor, she starts smashing the son's head into the arcade cabinet. He's now dead. Blood all over the arcade cabinet. There's like smashed glass. It looks something straight out of Black Mirror. Really cool. And as she realizes she just killed a human being, then the recollection hits, that was my son. Oh shit. And that becomes a moral choice. What happens is, at the end of the episode, the guy wakes up because everyone's dead, surprise twist, and they both cry because he's crying because he could have been a better kid. I wish I was still alive. The mom's crying because I want to have more time with my kid. They both sob. And then Deacon gives like a big hug to both of them and said, you did the best you could. You did the best you could. And it becomes a real tearful moment. And, to me, that's something that's really one of those things that even broke me for a bit. And I'm someone that, I get sentimental over things, but this is all fiction. This is a fictional series, and yet there was some sort of moment there, which I think was real, which is a real dramatic point, which is why I'm always drawn to Death Parade. And finally, it is Suicide Tour, which is the final episode of the season. Suicide Tour basically is the culmination of Chiyuki as the assistant to Deacon, as she is slowly fading away because she is a human and these are arbiters and arbiters aren't human. There is a life or death dilemma for Chiyuki. She can stay alive and revisit her old life because, as you know the twist, everybody's already dead. And basically the culmination is you can go back to your old life. You've never died. You can relive history. And you never died. But the twist is, if you decide to take this offer, one random person will die and take your place. It could be someone close by. It could be someone you've never met before anywhere in the world. It could be someone suffering. It could not be. Make the decision. And Chiyuki breaks down and has this amazing monologue. At this moment, the big twist is, and here's the big spoiler twist, the dilemma is fake. There is no dilemma. This is one final outcome for Deacon to see if the moral choice was moral. He breaks down, and finally, through this entire season arc, going from just a stoic person who has seen it all, not caring, breaks down in tears. This is the moment that this robot human finally has emotion. And he cries because he's sorry he manipulated her. Also sorry he has to say goodbye to her because he already has a season-long arc with her. So then, of course, she goes in the elevator and her fate is sealed. And then a new couple. Is this a new game? And that's it. That's the end of Death Parade. It becomes the end. So don't let the goth undertones fool you. The show has strong emotional beats in between its player of the episode and the how done it, concluding with final judgment that talks about suicide and depression in a slightly different light. That to me is the big appeal to Death Parade, the way it handles life and the way it handles depression and mental health. I think it's one of those dramas that also is smart and has a lot of things to say at the same time, but only so limited time to say it. That is all I've written down on my notepad. So that's how I'm going to conclude this review. Obviously, I could spend more time talking about Death Parade. If you enjoyed this, let me know. My recommendation is you give Death Parade a try, because it is a real thrill ride of an anime series, and I don't say it that often. Thank you so much for tuning in. Join me next time for another thing that might get my goat, shall we say. I don't know, get my goat, like what, I'm gonna be I guess I'm gonna end up being like a cranky, angry reviewer like everyone else on YouTube now. You know what really, really frustrates me? Like when you go to the traffic light, the Star Wars people, they have minorities now. What gives? Like, I don't fucking care about this. They're all jerks. Anyway, give Death Parade a try. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next time. Farewell.